Hello, hello, viewers and artists and all alike to the Art Lounge Alley. This is Figure Drawing Basics Part 102. We're climbing up there, and it's all the way up to 100 now. I'm your host, and I am excited to get started today on the next session. This is it right here. This is where I left off yesterday, and I'm going to continue, as promised, to work on the hands. And really just showing you guys the process from start to finish. The stages really for pretty much, I'm going to say, most drawings. The approach that you're going to have with this is going to be similar to, like, let's say if you're doing a figure or pretty much any part of the body or an entire drawing. I'm going to say this approach will really benefit you. So over here, just to reiterate what we did, for those of you who are just tuning in for the very first time, I'm showing the process of developing a drawing. So here, I started out by doing a quick sketch, just to get a general idea of how big I want it to be on the page, how wide it's going to be. Not really detailed. This is something that I fixed up a little bit later, and you guys will see it from scratch. But I started out by doing very basic shapes just to get the blocks out, get the chunks of the entire drawing on paper to set up the parameters, like I mentioned, how big it's going to be, how wide, etc. And then from there, I started to create the planes, basically. And when I say planes, I mean just the, surfaces on the face or on the hands or any other that are towards a flat side or are turning more towards a different direction. So for example, this is one plane, this is another plane, that's another plane, and it could get even as small as plane being here, another plane being here, plane on the bridge of the nose. This is another plane, the side of the nose. That's also a plane as well. This is a plane inside. So to give you guys a visual understanding of what that term really means for those of you who are just new or starting out, who aren't familiar with those terms, just a visual aid to get you better familiar with it. So here, as you could see, that's what's going on. I started to, after creating this simple drawing, I started to define the planes more. So, there is a plane here, there's a plane here as well, and that's what you're seeing over here in this drawing. On the side of the hand, that's another plane as well. The sides of the fingers as well, that's a plane. And what that does is that it gives you a better understanding of the object three-dimensionally. It's sometimes a lot easier to form it, almost like you're sculpting it, as opposed to just hoping you remember certain lines, where they go, and so on and so forth. Using the block form, it allows you to build like that. It allows you to basically sculpt whatever it is that you're working on. And then from there, once you have a better understanding of what's going on, and of course, the block form also helps with perspective as well. So as you could see, it's not a flat drawing. It's not just a hand with a straight shot where you're able to just see it this way. It's at an angle. So to get things right, to get the planes right in perspective, it really helps to use this block form to do that. And as you could see, it's throughout the entire drawing. The sides of the fingers are present for this entire drawing. And from there, once I established the planes, then I started to actually curve things more, connect the joints, curve these very edgy looking corners, to give the drawing more realism to it, or have it be more realistic and believable that it's a hand as opposed to like this block drawing. And I know it looks intimidating, but as you practice it more, the easier it becomes, and the easier the approach becomes. And it really isn't as intimidating as it looks. You know, having to round off corners, having to add these layers, it all becomes like icing on the cake, because you got the most of the drawing down. You figured out the dimensions, you figured out the width and proportion and anatomy of it. It's just having to beautify the image. That's how I like to put it. You're making it look better by curving all those places, erasing lines, like these really hard lines. Here you could see them more because I want it to be more visually, for it to be visible for you guys when you're looking at it. So if you're doing it at your own pace, at your own time, obviously you're not streaming it. You want to do these two steps to your drawing at a very light, at light pressure. You don't want it to be as prominent as you're seeing it here, because once you do start correcting things, you want it to be as far in the background as possible, as light as possible, so that you could erase them and you can make the drawing look even better. But yeah, for the purpose of you guys, they're a little bit more visible here. So I'm going to continue on with this drawing. I'm going to do one more of this pose, this hand pose, and then I'm going to move on to the next one. So all in all, it's like a 4-stage process, I want to say. But remember, the more you practice, the better you understand this, the faster you get at drawing, the less you'll need to rely on these very technical drawings. So for some of you who are looking at this, you might say, and this is a common thing, I don't really want it to be that technical. I want it to be a free-flowing sort of experience that I see a lot of professional artists do. And that's exactly the point, is that they've been doing it for a very long time. That's what got them to this professional level. They've been exercising hands. They've been drawing daily, to a point where these images, these proportions, these lines that you see on here are ingrained in their memory, the same way as the alphabet is ingrained in your memory, and you don't have to recite it every time you sit down to read. So, you know, for them, it is a free-flowing experience. For them, they could start out at any point within this, let's say, hand, and create it to be as detailed as it is, without having to create these very technical drawings. But before you get there, you have to, just like they have, practice and understand it better, and eventually you won't have to rely on it, and it will be this free-flowing experience, as I mentioned, where you could do whatever, starting from the tip of the finger, and then eventually shape it out to be as detailed as that. So with that said, let's continue. And I'm going to do it again for example, and you guys are going to see this example several times actually. I'm going to start out with quick gesture drawing. And in this gesture drawing, I'm creating big shapes. You know, I'm not focusing on anything. I'm not going into detail about anything. I'm just getting the general shape of the hand of this pose. Could be messy, it doesn't matter, because again, you want to make sure that it's a sketch, it's light. You know, this is a placeholder. You're not going to go based off of this to the T, you know, when you start really putting in the details. This is something for you to work off of. This is the first layer. Now that that's done, I'm going to start constructing the planes here. the side of the hand is varies. So it goes from thick to thin, thick to thin, to make sure that it's accurate to an actual hand. And this also, not only does it help with perspective, not only does it help with you understanding it visually better, it also helps with shading. So you start to see, okay, well, this is a plane, and if the light source is coming from here, then this is going to be in shadow. Remember, the shadows are always on the opposite side of the light source. So if the light source is here, shadows are going to be on this side. So it's coming down on the hand, and this side isn't going to catch that much of it, so shading is going to be here, let's just say. Or it could be, if it's coming down this way, then shading is going to be in the middle, because the fingers are going to be obstructing any of the light from reaching there. So it has multiple benefits. It's not just for, it's not this like really technical drawing to get a better grip on these features. It's also beneficial for things like shading. And believe me, you'll struggle less because you'll start to really understand the shapes and how things connect and all the little details as you approach your drawings in this manner. And then eventually, as I mentioned, you won't have to, because you've gotten a better understanding of it, as opposed to just winging it, and drawing things as you see them, perfecting the lines, heavily depending on the reference, as opposed to just doing it and understanding why things are where they are. The former puts you in the position of always relying on a reference, because you don't really grasp the feature as well. You're just understanding lines. You're just perfecting your line work and your hand-eye coordination, which isn't to say it's not beneficial. It's very beneficial. But you want to be able to, in the process of developing your hand-eye coordination, you also want to start understanding what you're drawing, so that you could just recall it from memory. And this approach, and something I mentioned yesterday as well in the beginning of the stream, this approach is really beneficial for other things like drawing the head as well, and for drawing, let's say, if you decide to draw an automobile or even a building. It's, I guess, the most basic example of that approach would be a building. If you guys do want to catch up on yesterday's lesson and catch up on some of the things that I talked about, you guys can access that by heading over to the video section in the Twitch channel and filtering it based on collection, which will open up folders for each stream, and you can go and view all the previous streams. It goes back as far as the very first for each stream, and you guys could catch up. And some for those of you who are returning, for those of you who are new, there are some repeating lessons in the streams, but I always make sure to talk about something new each time. There are certain things that I like to reiterate, because I do feel that that's the best way you learn, through repetition. There are certain things that we focus on them, we remember, and we miss the first time around. And then the second time around, we're like, oh, I remember him mentioning this, which leaves you room to focus on something new. So, through the process of repetition, through the process of, highlighting similar themes, you guys pick up new stuff as you review it frequently. You guys can also check out the special streams, one of them being Gil Elfgren, as a famous pinup artist, beautiful work. But in that stream, I talk about not only him and show you guys his amazing work, but I also talk about his influences, artists that have inspired him throughout the years before he even became such a renowned artist. Talking about whose work he collected. He literally ripped out pages from magazines at the time, and he would save them, just stacked one on top of each other, and look through them as a way of inspiring himself to get better, to really to excel at his drawing, take things to the next level. And it's a really effective way of doing it. Some people, well, including myself, I kind of undervalue that process of taking the time every day and looking at work that you really like, looking at art, looking at comic books if you're into comic books, looking at paintings if you're into paintings. It's a way to get the juices flowing, to really start the engine and focus on drawing, focus on the field of interest. It really helps with inspiration. And that's something that I started doing more often now. In fact, I would wake up early in the morning and I would immediately, the first thing I would look at would be comic books. John Buscema's work. I recently acquired Buscema Michelangelo of Comics book, which has beautiful work done by him. I also acquired a sketchbook of his, also amazing work there as well. And I just wake up and I look at that, and it really inspires me. Like, the first thing to focus on would be that. It's a great way to start the day for me personally, and I encourage you guys to do the same. Find something that you really like, find an artist or a comic book that you really enjoy, and have that by your bedside. And when you wake up in the morning, immediately open that up. Don't look at your phone. Look at that, and then afterwards look at your phone if you want to. That's there. But I think that inspiration really kicks things into gear and motivates me to start my day out right. So yeah, you guys can also check out the special stream talking about Gil Elfgren, talking about all those inspirations. In the same place, heading over to the video section and filtering it based on collection, where you will find a folder called Highlights. And in that folder, I have pretty much all of my special streams throughout the Art Lounge Alley. It still feels, it's a weird feeling, even though I'm up to episode 100, it really feels like I just started out. And I think that's probably because I've been streaming every day since I started. So it's like this mix of like, a lot has happened, but it's all been been a very short period of time, I guess. I'm just going back to the drawing. As you guys could see, this area that I'm shading in right now, it's not receiving a lot of sunlight. So, yeah, you could see that. That's really where the most of the shade is going to go. And I'm going to start erasing certain lines that I don't need. Like, for example, I don't need this line anymore. That was really there to just give a better understanding be a visual aid. And now that that's established, I could start really wiping these away. Some shading on the bottom of the fingers, since again the light isn't going to reach that plane, you know, this area. Looks like the light source is coming down from the top. So all this is catching light. All this is catching light, and these fingers, these two fingers that are curled, are blocking any light from hitting the center. I recently, talking about John Bassem, I recently found a YouTube video. It's actually a video that I was mentioning before, that I saw on Instagram. But it's a video of John Bassem drawing, and it goes from the sketch all the way to the final stage, which is inking. Really amazing work. I love watching it. I've actually watched it several times. But in that process, I also found another video that has to deal with another great artist named Bill Sienkiewicz. Bill Sienkiewicz, you guys might have seen his work before. For those of you who are not familiar, I will be doing a preview of him sometime in the future. His work is very unique. It's very interesting as well. There's some beautiful illustrations done by him. And it's an interview of him just talking about how he landed a position as an illustrator. And it's kind of interesting because it was during a very different time. You know, there was, at the time, people did get jobs by going to places and actually like talking to the people in those specific places as a way of getting jobs. You know, they would go to the offices and actually meet with people who run the place and get positions. It's still around, but it's a lot less common. You know, most people do it online. But yeah, it's just, in that interview, it's very interesting. He talks about that. He talks about his education, what it was like when he was studying, and what are some of the things that artists of his time were telling him as he was growing up, and the kind of advice that he was getting, and whether he was taking it or not. It was a really interesting interview. So that's going to be coming up as well. There's a lot more exciting stuff that's going to happen with the Art Lounge Alley. A lot more interesting content coming your way next week. There's going to be a really cool special intro that doesn't have to deal with Gil Elfgren, which I do imagine is going to continue on for some time, actually. So it might turn into weeks of 2 special intros. You know, at the moment, I'm kind of trying to focus on having 1 special intro every week. Can't always guarantee it, but that's kind of the direction that I want to head with these streams and with special intros. I enjoy making them. I enjoy showing you guys new content as well. So it's a goal for me for the future of the stream. But yeah, next week, make sure you guys tune in for a couple of new special intros. But this week, you guys are going to be seeing another Gil Elfgren special intro that I'm going to continue on talking about his inspirations. It's going to be a lot of fun, so look out for that as well. All right, so what we're looking at here is the 4 stages, basically. So the initial sketch, just to give you an idea of how big, how small, how you want to center it, how wide. You know, that's a real big issue, especially when it comes to hands. You know, for example, I know for a lot of you who are just starting out, a lot of people who have been drawing even, they would start out with the thumb, right? And they would start drawing it, and by the time they get down to the base, it might be a little bit too long. That base might be too long, but they're going to continue on with it. They're going to start drawing the other side of the hand, and it might end up being really wide, you know. And then they continue on with the fingers, and the fingers might be too narrow, you know. So this approach that you guys are seeing, this outlining approach, doesn't guarantee a good outcome. You know, you might end up making a really nice rendition of the thumb, but then by the time you get over here, you're going to realize that it's too far away from the rest of the hand, from the rest of the fingers. So that's a pitfall. That's a pitfall for outline drawings. And as I mentioned, that becomes more accurate the more you practice the right way of drawing it, understanding its limitations in width and height and the relationship between the fingers together, and so on and so forth. The more your eye gets used to the proper foundation, the proper measurements of the hand, the more you could rely on your intuitive way of drawing. But really, intuitive is just skill, acquired skill. You know, that's really what intuitive drawing would really be close to in description. So here, this is a quick sketch just to give you that idea. Then, as I mentioned, bringing out the planes to give you a better understanding of the dimensions, of proportions, shaping those planes. As you can see here, I started adding folds, connecting the joints, curving the angled sections, erasing lines that I don't really need, and then eventually forming it with shade and correcting little details here and there to have it be this. So that's done. Now I'm going to continue on with another hand pose. Right after I erase these very small examples here. Okay, so this is going to be another one here. Same approach, just general shape. Sketching things out lightly. Remember, placeholder. And just to review some of the things that I talked about when it comes to drawing the hands, the base of the fingers, this area right here, is never straight. So let me see if I could do a little example down here. So this is the base right here. This is where the fingers would be. You want to avoid creating this very straight line because it's curved. And because it's curved, the top of the fingers are also curved as well. They're not all in a straight line going across. So you got the pinky, that's the smallest one. Then you got the ring finger. You got the middle finger, which is the tallest one of them all. And you got the index finger, which varies. Sometimes it is the second tallest out of the four. Sometimes it's shorter than the ring finger. So it really varies. So you want to make sure that when you are drawing the base, that it is on a curved line. It's not on a straight line going across like that. And that's what you're seeing here. You know, the fingers are curved here. Index finger, the pinky. I'm just giving it a little bit more definition. Notice I'm not holding it too close to the tip. I'm not pressing too hard on it. I'm teaching myself this good habit. Maintaining it by always remembering to do that in every single drawing, at the beginning of every single drawing. That's a very important thing to keep up. And to simplify it a little bit more in this process, I'm relying on very basic shapes. So as you can see, like the fingers are kind of like a French fry shape, right? I'm not really drawing any curves or anything like that. They're pretty straight. There's nothing complicated about them. And because they're placeholders, it's not important. So this is the initial sketch, just as similar to this. Now I'm going to continue with the next example. And by the time I'm going to be at the last stage, you guys are going to see the full process from this stage all the way to the finished product. So once again, big shapes. And as I mentioned, this is why it's important to practice basic shapes, because the better you get at them, the faster you become at drawing them. Well, one, your drawing is going to look good even in that stage. You know, if you're really fast about drawing basic shapes and they come out crisp and confident, you're gonna feel pretty good going forward. So if you got a little sketchbook with you at all times, great exercises, you know, drawing basic shapes, drawing cylinder shapes, drawing the circle over and over again, getting faster at it, perfecting it more. You know, you're not focusing on anything complicated if you're on public transit. If you're sitting somewhere waiting, you know, if you got an appointment for something, and rather than flipping through your phone, you could take out your little sketchbook and start drawing. These very simple exercises, doing these very simple exercises. So when it comes down to just sketching things out like this, you could do it with even more confidence and grace. And that's really what makes some people's drawings look so appealing. Like when I was looking at Basama's sketching, you know, at the beginning stages of it, even that looked really good. And that's because he had so much confidence in his technique and his drawing skills. You know, just simple little lines here and there brought the drawing to life. As his brother said, he was always drawing. You know, whatever he was doing, if he got bored of it, he would just take out his drawing book and start drawing. He would eat, sleep, and breathe drawing. Like, that's just how people remembered him. It was that good. Well, he was that disciplined, you know, and he enjoyed drawing. Alright, so we're at this stage now, the same stage as it is here, so I'm going to start defining things more. I'm going to start creating the planes. And even these sections here on the finger, they're also curved, as I mentioned, instead of it being straight, you know, like so. They follow the same curvature as the base of the fingers all the way to the top. So another thing to note to make your drawing look more believable, more accurate. I feel like this beat is something that you would hear on Sonic the Hedgehog or something. Which I heard the new game is really good. In fact, that's the kind of game that I would really enjoy playing. I like adventure games that aren't like, you know, shooting people in the face. Yeah, those kind of games. I absolutely detest all those like first-person shooter games. They're so stupid. I hate them, to be honest. I used to play them when I was much younger, but I quickly gave them up because I just got bored of that. And I just don't find that entertaining. And the fact that people find that entertaining is also kind of, it's disturbing. Like, why is that considered to be fun? And I think a lot of it has to do with popularity. You know, somebody who is popular does it, other people do it because that's what's done. You know, just following trends kind of creates this like programming in people where people start to do things because of something like that, you know. So, and I find that to be so destructive towards self-development. Like, people are just becoming these like trend zombies where they don't even think about why it's entertaining for themselves, they just do it. You know, it's supposed to be entertaining because everybody, let's say, in my school is doing it. You know, or that's what you do in college. Like, but is it really entertaining, and the value system there and the sort of things that are done, is that really entertainment, and why? Why is it entertaining to shoot somebody in the face? Why is violence really so entertaining? There isn't really a good argument for that. And it's for people to say, well, it's just basic instincts or whatever. That's also a terrible example, because we don't, civilization isn't based on basic instincts. If it was, it would be complete chaos. You know, people would be like murdering each other, stealing, killing, raping, all that stuff, because basic instincts or whatever, right? Like animals. So that's not a good answer for it. We've developed as a civilization because we started to control our basic instincts better. We're not like animals. We're much smarter than animals. We're capable of much more than animals. So I think that a lot of people just justify it because they do enjoy the violence. They don't like to work on themselves and try to evolve out of these basic instincts. You know, it's a lot easier to react than it is to think about your reaction and prevent it. You know, it's a lot easier to do that. So people take the shortcut. We've all evolved out of like childhood, and when you're a child, you don't have as good control over your emotions. You don't have as good control over your thoughts and behaviors. You know, that's exactly what the growing process is like. The idea of responsibility, that starts to creep in, you know, the older that we get. And some people just hate that idea. So they try to justify not being that way as much as possible. And some people, rather than actually becoming better, they become better at being worse. You know, they become better at manipulating people. They become better at like fabricating lies and that sort of thing, and that's what they grow into. That's their direction. And some people get caught in that storm. So just like bringing it back around, this idea of like, why are first-person shooter games entertaining? I'm just not a fan, and I don't think I'm ever going to be a fan. In fact, I know I'm never going to be a fan of those kind of games. One of my favorite games, actually, that comes somewhat close to it, but I play it very differently, is Assassin's Creed. That game, I play as a rogue. I basically try to avoid as much violence as possible, and I use like the agility that they have, which is so cool, being able to like climb and escape and outmaneuver opponents. And I don't use weapons. I actually just fist fight through any conflict that's absolutely unavoidable, or I try to use like instruments that aren't disgustingly violent. And I like that's an option, like that you don't have to do that stuff. But yeah, just a game that's kind of in that violent zone, but it's not really, and it's more like this adventure game that reveals a lot of history, talks about the progress of civilization. It's awesome. I absolutely love that game. It's so much fun. particularly because it is about this like human evolution and history and how we've come so far. You know, what has changed over the years. Talking about really interesting events in history and certain interesting figures. Like they've had Edgar Allan Poe in one of their missions, and they had Karl Marx and a bunch of other characters throughout, historical characters. It's a great game. In fact, I'm hoping that once I get through these personal projects that I'm doing, that I'm gonna have time to sit down and enjoy the new ones that have come out. And I'm still debating on whether I should just get like a PlayStation 5 to play them. Because right now I have like this streaming service where you're streaming games, not Luna, but another one, and it's not great. I'm not really a fan of like constantly paying a membership fees. I kind of want to own it, play it at the play it offline even, you know, just not having to be connected all the time online. I like that idea. I want to support that more because I don't want it to turn into like you can never own anything and you have to continuously pay for something to enjoy it. Because I'm noticing subscriptions for everything, you know, you got to subscribe now to have access to download packs or whatever, like, you know, and then you have to subscribe in the download packs to maintain the items that you have. And, you know, of course I'm exaggerating, but it doesn't seem like there's going to be an end. As long as people go along with it, they're going to keep pushing things more and more, and pricing things more and more for that reason. Like, nobody's like going against it. We're not losing profits. People are still continuing to do it. So why not? Let's up the fee. Let's up the things that they have to pay for monthly. So just going back to the drawing, we got the initial sketch, the one where the planes are defined more using the block form. And now this is going to be one where I'm going to start refining these more, giving it more and more texture. But I think, by the looks of it, by the look at the time, I'm gonna have to do that tomorrow. You guys are gonna see that happen more tomorrow because I gotta take a 5-minute break and get ready for the next stream, which is gonna be the project stream. I'm excited to show you guys I finished the project that I've been working on for the past few streams. I'm gonna say it's more than few, but that's done, and today is gonna be the beginning of the new project. Now this is probably going to be temporary. I'm not going to spend all my time on it. I do want to do more work from my imagination, but this is a master study. This is going to be a painting. It's going to be one of my favorite paintings. In fact, it's done by Jacques-Louis David. He is a French painter. I absolutely love French painters. I think they're amazing. But yeah, it's going to be of Socrates. It's going to be the death of Socrates. It's this famous painting of the moment before Socrates drinks hemlock. And I'll talk about that more in the next stream. So that's coming up next. I'm excited to start that and show you guys what's going on. So if you guys do enjoy this content, make sure you do remember to hit the like and subscribe button. They're both greatly appreciated. They'll help the stream grow and reach out to more people who are interested in art and who want to be part of an artistic community, who want to learn all these tips and tricks and just see amazing work. So thanks again, everybody. I will see you in the next stream. Hey everybody, welcome to the Art Lounge Alley. This is project part 70. It's actually the beginning of a new project that I'm going to be working on. But prior to doing that, I'm going to show you guys the result. For those of you who are tuning in, who've been watching, this is the final piece. I found a lot of time during the weekend, and I put in the hours. I really wanted to see it finished, and I'm really happy with it. Actually, it's one of those things that happens very frequently, which is at the beginning not knowing where it's going to end up at the end, whether it's going to be as good as I see it visually in my head. So there's like a lot of doubt that comes into play, but as I go through it, the more I develop it, the more it starts to take shape of how I actually pictured it in my head. So I'm pretty happy with it. And I did some work on the glasses as well. I actually changed some things around, gave them that glow actually, and I think that really brought out the image as well. So anyways, this is it, and I hope you guys enjoyed that. Today I am going to start something new. Now I'm not sure if I'm going to stick with it. I'm probably going to work on it for some time, and then I'm going to switch over to doing more work from my imagination. But this is what I'm going to be working on. This is a painting done by Jacques-Louis David. He is a French painter, and it's a painting of Socrates. He's in the middle, and this is right before this famous scene of him drinking hemlock. And how that came about was he was well known for the Socratic method, which is basically questioning everything and always trying to arrive at the truth through the process of questioning things. And at the time, this is like ancient Greece, I want to say ancient Greek. Anyways, back in the day, he was walking around. He was questioning pretty much everybody, people of authority, people who deemed themselves to be above everybody else, so on and so forth. And what they ended up finding out is that they didn't really know as much as they thought they did, and that really angered them. And of course, they took it out on Socrates because he had them arrive at that reality, at that truth. But Socrates was very adamant about that approach. He was very adamant about the idea that you always have to question, and you should have the freedom to question things, as it is the very nature of arriving at the truth. So at the time, He was disturbing a lot of politicians, of course. Again, this really goes back to that. And they didn't like it. And, this the fascism really that started to surface again, once again, telling him that he has to cut it out, that he has to stop questioning things. He has to stop questioning people's knowledge and authority on things, and he's causing a lot of problems because he's also awakening a lot of people who weren't questioning things before, and that's causing problems for them. They can't exploit these people as much because people are starting to wake up to truths that obviously a lot of these rich bags didn't really want to didn't want people to arrive to. So they gave him an option. They said either you quit it, either you stop questioning things, or we are going to basically throw you in jail, or we're gonna off you. And they gave him options, and Socrates says, well, if I'm gonna live in a reality that I'm not allowed to question, it's a reality I don't want to live in. And he chose to drink hemlock as a way of being sentenced to death. And in this scene, you could see a lot of the people that followed him, Plato being one of them, which you could see him all the way on the left side, sitting there contemplating the nature of this scenario, and a lot of other people who followed him who really respected his understanding and knowledge, are surrounded by him, and in his very last moment before hemlock is being given to him for him to drink. And even in that moment, you could see that he is still in the state of questioning and trying to arrive at truth with a gesture of him pointing upwards. The idea of rise above, become smarter, or pointing at the truth, which I think at a lot of times people refer to it as heavenly knowledge. So that's kind of like what the pointing upwards kind of indicates, I'm going to say. But it's an awesome painting. It's beautiful. The being able to actually see it, and I had the opportunity to actually see it in a museum up close. Huge painting, amazing work. I mean, it's just such skill in rendering things, such skill, like looking at the guy's legs, the guy who's handing him the hemlock. You could just see how delicate of a process it was. Like, he got all the colors down, he has the muscles down. It's incredible. I'm gonna say incredible rendering, incredible painting skills, incredible color choices. Just like the color of the skin is so great on Socrates, on the guy who's handing him the hemlock, even on Plato. And you guys are going to see that when as I zoom in. Really, it's a pretty high detailed image. So just the face expression there, and the detail on the beard as well is really incredible. The hair, the locks on their hair, and just like how smooth of a transition it is from color to color. When it comes to like the shoulder, for example, back, just pretty much any single part, even like the clothes that they're wearing, the folds on them. It's such a smooth transition from tone to tone. And as I mentioned, the skin tone as well, such great skill in blending colors together and picking the right colors. And it's a very difficult task. It's not as forgiving as digital. With digital, you're just Control-Z away from erasing a mistake. Whereas when it comes to painting, it's not the same. You really have to know what you're doing. Color mixing isn't as forgiving. And, you do have to really have a lot of experience with mixing colors in order to be able to work faster, instead of spending time trying to get the right color. A lot of these painters were so good at it, have been doing it for such a long time, that they could instantly mix the color to get the right tone specifically for a certain shadow. But just really beautiful work. The face expressions are also great. And just like the drama in the scene is also fantastic. Oh, this has been moving around. Let me just put it back in place. There you go. So I'm going to be continuing on. This is where I left off, actually. I started this a while ago. And I started out with Play-Doh, and I was just going to work my way all the way from left to right. So I'm going to continue working on it today. This has been a while. I haven't really painted digitally like this in some time now. So I'm going to need to warm up. Got to warm up. And a lot of this is going to be getting more familiar with brushes for this technique. You know, unlike the work that you guys have seen, when it comes to coloring, it's flat drawing. It's flat coloring. Whereas here, there's like so much variation. That it's going to take me some time. And the technique is very different. It's kind of going to push me to explore the options here. There's something called a watery brush, and it's absolutely not what I need right now. Maybe wet brush? Nope. I don't think it's a watercolor brush either. I'm gonna try oil paint brush, but I don't think. There's thick oil paint. Ooh, maybe this is it. Just gonna have to play with that. And I think this really helps improve hand-eye coordination. It helps improve your attention to detail, especially. Like, that's the number one thing. That's really what I'm aiming to gain from this approach. It's to continuously challenge my ability. And this is one of the best ways to go about it. And also just being able to study this amazing painting. This is probably going to take me some time because I don't want it to be close. I want it to be as exact as possible. So as I shape out everything in this drawing, and I kind of went about just like, creating general shapes, as you could see, like not really spending too much time or any detail at the moment, but just placeholders, something I talk about very frequently, in order to be able to just go back and start putting in more detail. There's just like tiny little things that make a difference. The droplet tool is the best friend. In this process, I'm constantly going to be using it. And I'm already noticing some mistakes here and there from my original work. But even using the droplet tool, I'm still not going to get like the accurate colors because it's pixelated. So whenever I'm using the droplet tool and I'm like trying to get a sample of a certain section, there's no guarantee that that section is going to be the right pigment. I'm just clicking on a pixel, but the pixel right next to that pixel might have a different color or a different tone. So you can't really fully rely on the droplet tool. It's just handy. You just kind of have to understand what color you're seeing. It may look brown, but it's actually red, or like a shade of red mixed in with some other shade. So it really helps with a lot of things. Not just hand-eye coordination, but also color. Understanding color. This is very challenging. But leave your comments, guys. Let me know if you want to see more of this. Me progressing further and further in this painting. Or would you guys rather see more work from imagination? Because at the moment I am leaning more towards that. There's more stuff that I'd like to start developing. But I am enjoying this as well. speaking of actually, of being sentenced to death, what's going on in Iran is disgusting. It's crazy. It's absolutely insane. There's a bunch of people who are protesting the death of a young girl because of like the hijab thing. Like she didn't want to wear one, and because of that, she ended up being tortured and killed. And now they're sentencing like 15,000 protesters to the death penalty for creating a ruckus. I mean, if that's not something to really start pushing for more protests and take over this tyrannical, insane government, I don't know what is. When you were being sentenced to death for protesting, it's absolutely insane. It's craziness. And again, it's on the grounds, like all of that, right? It's on the grounds of religious beliefs. So basically they're saying you should be following morality, and if you're not, we're going to kill you. Like, it is morally right for you to wear these hijabs, but if you don't, we're going to murder you. That doesn't make any sense. It's complete contradiction towards moral values that you're enforcing on others. So you're going to enforce people to act right while you threaten murder. That's tyranny. That's nothing more. That's not about morality at all whatsoever. That's just saying I want things done the way I want them to be done, and using religion as a way to do it. It's just a bunch of outdated old men who are scared, who can't control their very basic behaviors and instincts, and they're forcing other people to accommodate that. There's these women who are just like sick of it. They're like, hey, I just want to be able to live and breathe and just do whatever. Like to be a human being. I'm not here to just serve your ineptitude, basically. They're like incapable of controlling themselves. They're incapable of controlling their horniness, or desires or whatever. So they're gonna sentence other people to live in like this fear, basically, for their own ignorance. That's ridiculous. I don't agree with that at all whatsoever. And I totally agree with the women there. They should be protesting that. Like, you have a better education system. Learn how to control yourself. Stop torturing people because of that. It's absolutely insane behavior. And I do agree with sanctions. Like, they should be sanctioned. I don't care what people say about it. That place should be sanctioned for it. The people who are being tyrannical, who are abusing their political power, should see things get worse for themselves because of that. Abusing citizens, abusing people, killing them for their own ego trips. It's absolutely crazy. And more people should continue to protest and eventually overthrow the government there. Because that is not the type of place that you should be living in. Where anything that you say against tyranny or against corruption and abuse and fear-mongering or whatever is going to lead you to death. That's being held captive. That's being in a prison, basically. In a prison that's continuing to exploit you. And this is, my theory is that this is just conservatives working together all around to make sure that it becomes more and more difficult for democracy to thrive. Democracy thriving means less exploitation and less money for them. So this is every country all around the world who has like these quote unquote, what they like to call conservative, but I call fascist, because it has nothing to do with morality. They're absolutely the opposite of morality. Their actions and values are the complete opposite and are contradictory. So they're just straight up fascist people all over the world who don't want to see their power influence loosen. So they're working together to create these problems. You got Russia creating wars for the same purpose. You got people in Iran, their government, that's creating all this. Basically, again, murdering people for power and status. You got people here who are trying to enable white supremacists and trying to like turn the country into a fascist country with book banning. Trying to like create price gouging and then voting against it while saying that it has to do with inflation. Creating an oligarchy here where it's just like the top 10%, if even, are just basically controlling everything around, and everybody's subjected to their insane behavior. Telling women that they can't control their bodies either. I mean, it's a different form, right? It's the same thing that's happening in Iran that's happening here. They're saying, oh, you don't have the right to control your own body and decide whether you should abort a baby that potentially could be coming from a rapist or an uncle or a father. You know, like when we have cases of incest and all that other insane scenarios, they're saying, no, you don't get to decide that. And there's like no exception to it. Some states are saying no exception. So they're just trying to create as much problems as possible because they're being challenged and their position of power is being taken away more and more. And they're going to continue to create these problems. And I think people really do have to start protesting here as much as possible. Like, I'm not talking about once and expecting that to really change anything. I'm talking about every day having rotating groups of protesters so that way we could keep up the momentum. You know, you could have Group A protesting and then they go home, Group B starts, then Group C, and so on and so forth until it comes back to Group A again to let Group B or C recuperate and do whatever else. And it has to go on for weeks and months until it becomes a problem, until basically you could shut down the economy until they start complying with these demands coming from the people. Because there's a very good chance that these wings, right, left, whatever, are working together for the same reason as I mentioned before. They don't want to see their power crumble. They don't want to see their legacy, quote unquote, their fascist, sociopathic behaviors that have created their legacy crumble. So they're going to do whatever it takes. They're going to lie. They're going to gaslight the public. They're going to try to shift the focus onto something else. They're going to make it like, now they're trying to make it a sensationalist thing of like black person versus black person, Herschel Walker versus what was the other guy's name? Warren. You know, it's going to be this thing now, like which black person is going to prevail in this scenario, the good or the bad, the one in the red or the blue. You know, it's just going to turn into this like pay-per-view scenario that they're using to distract people from the fact that, hey, you know, the economy is total shit. Prices are high. They're not going down despite like all these claims coming from even the right, or the left rather, that, oh, things are looking up and they're getting better and so on and so forth. No, the food prices, gas prices, they're still going up. Of course, that's having to do more with the right than the left, but I don't see the left doing much about it. In fact, we're going to start seeing a lot of like dodgy behavior coming from the House of Representatives. I guarantee you, once they're going to start, they're going to have or they're going to take over the House. They're going to start doing things that Democrats could have done, to pass laws, to pass regulations, to get things going. They're going to figure out how to do it, and it's going to make you question, like, well, why didn't the left do that when they were controlling the House? Why didn't they take this similar action? I'm almost 100% positive this is how it's all going to go down. They're going to start turning into that Herschel Walker and Warren into like a pay-per-view, sort of political pay-per-view. Who's going to do it? You know, who's going to win? It's up to the people to create change. You can't depend on these people who are riding basically our taxes and riding the wave of like power and influence to actually care and change our dependency on them. They're not going to do that. They're going to continue to create problems and keep people glued to this like political fiasco and constantly like dangling the carrot, basically being like, oh, we're almost there. No, that's not going to happen. You know, and just continuously bring people up and then bring them down. That's just their tactic. And until people actually start banding together for change and start demanding it the way that they're doing it in Iran. I mean, look at that. They're at a point where the government is trying to like issue executions, which isn't going to happen here. You know, we're not living in that kind of third world scenario. It's absolutely insane. But this is the kind of disruption that needs to happen, you know, for people to actually see change, for people to start demanding jobs that have like progressive work environments that aren't basically making people feel like they're walking on eggshells all the time and they're about to lose their job to somebody else, or you know, not even have to ask for raises anymore because they're too scared for that. Like, that's the position that people are in. Everybody's like holding on to their jobs as if though they're not going to have one the next day. And we got to flip that script. You know, as we saw, those people don't care about you, and they're going to make it more and more difficult while collecting record-breaking profits. And I think people really have to get sick of that. You know, especially the new generation. They have to get sick of that same old story. 50s, 60s. I'm going to say 60s because 50s was like this booming period where people after the war came back and started, you know, prospering, which is what they're trying to do. They're trying to like bring about war for that reason because it's profitable and it's their way of resetting things. But we can't allow that. Can't have this continuous cycle of stupid behavior and have it justified each time, because they're going to keep doing it. So we have to change the script. We have to do something different. And that's the way we go about that. You know, you got to do it in each campus. You got to do it in each state, each city. People have to start doing that collectively. You know, one place isn't enough. It has to really reverberate through. I don't know. I'm appalled at that. You know, it's 2022, slowly creeping in on 2030, and instead of things progressing towards like more of understanding, unifying understanding, an understanding of humanity rather than nationality. You know, rather than, you know, all these ego trips. A multicultural nation where people really appreciate each other and have a harmonious living instead of this like nationalistic fascist Nazi garbage. that's manifesting more and more. And people who don't have those kind of values really need to step it up. People who have money, people who have influence, like all these celebrities and all that other stuff, they're making money from people who appreciate that kind of stuff. And they're being envied by fascists and basically all those who have like those sociopathic values and behaviors. So they have to start stepping up and creating better opportunities for people who are giving them these opportunities, who are giving them this freedom that they have. And it has to be coupled with the people standing up as well. It can't be just one or the other. It has to be both, and it has to be persistent. And I think they're already taking action. Like they're trying to impeach a Democrat in the House. The Republicans are trying to do that, which is like, again, why didn't Democrats do that when they were facing all this pushback in the middle of the pandemic for them to pass regulations and laws that would have helped the people? Why didn't they start trying to impeach and push for those people to get booted? They don't do enough. They don't do any of that stuff. They take taxes and they write good memes and messages about what should be done, but not do anything about it. And they're like, oh, this is how things are right now. This is what they're doing. And they're complaining about this when they did that. And that's great. Like, informing us about that is great. But you're in a position as a politician to start doing something about it. That's why you're there. To defend our interests by actually doing something about it, aside from just educating the public. That's important, but action, is just as important as well. It's very frustrating. And this is more of a problem for the younger generation, that people who are in college who are trying to create a future for themselves, seeing this being the future, where it's going to be even more fascist and crazy and sociopathic, where people's lives don't matter at all whatsoever. The only thing that matters is capital. Like, it's such an insane environment. That's why I think it's important for the young generation to get involved and start doing things, because they're in a position to have the freedom to do it. They're still in school. They don't have like that crushing debt or all those bills yet, or they're not in those they're not that deep in their debt yet. And they have that freedom to actually go out there and start protesting. But it's everybody's responsibility. It's not just the younger generation. I think it's everybody's responsibility to make sure that things don't get crazy, even more and more crazy. We have to be vigilant about that. And we have to start recognizing that politicians are going to do bare minimum for our interests. They want to maintain their hold over the people. But yeah, that stuff that's going on in Iran, it's insane. Like, how is that different than concentration camps? Like, when people were just thrown in concentration camps and executed. Why is that okay? Why is this? I mean, why is this that's going on? Okay, if you're going to be against Nazis, if you're going to think that that was such a wrong time, and what they were doing was absolutely insane, how is that different from this sort of behavior? It's exactly the same. It's absolute political corruption. And I think it's important for people to talk about that with each other, rather than shying away from it, rather than finding it to be too heavy. We have to embrace that and talk about it and be excited about creating change. Despite all this crazy behavior and things starting to look grim, being excited to know that here's an opportunity to really turn things around, to have a cause to band together, talk about solutions, talk about ways to improve things, talk about actions. And through that, I think a lot of people discover more about themselves, about what's really important. It's a great journey, and I don't think that people should be discouraged or fall for it, because there's absolutely going to be people who are incredibly lazy, don't care, who are defeatists, or who like to fearmonger. They kind of get off on that. They like to talk people out of things by making things seem like they're doom and gloom and impossible and all that other stuff, because in some ways that absolves them of having to take any responsibility. So it's important to stay away from that and to usher in change, to discuss more and more ways to improve things, and just stay away from people who are defeatists and who whine about how things aren't going to change and how it's all going to be the same and blah, 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 blah. Can't tell you how many times I've come across that, where you get these whiny characters that just don't care about anything other than their own misery, or not having to change and start actually doing something about things. It's a lot easier to just be like, well, that's how things are, and this is how things will be, and it's because people are like that. It's just a bunch of excuses to say I don't want to do anything about it, or I don't actually believe in change, and I don't really want anything to change. I like it how it is. So yeah, I suggest not to interact with people like that. And focus on creating change. Focus on coming up with ideas and theories and approaches, and creating protests, banding together for a cause, for a better future. I think that's more interesting. That's more progressive, and I also think it's fun. It's a fun approach. Yeah, it's been so long that I've done this that I really do forget what the process calls for. And how much needs to be put in. It is slowly approaching, ladies and gents, as much as I am enjoying this, and I want to keep going, to be honest. I want to get further and further along in this painting. But it is approaching for that time where I have to end the stream for the night. I will be back, absolutely, so don't worry. I will be back tomorrow, same time and place, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for figure drawing basics. But at 9 p.m. I'm going to be doing coloring comics, which is going to be me working on John Buscema's comics, another project of mine that I absolutely love doing, enjoy very much. That's going to be at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Twitch. But as I mentioned earlier, if you guys enjoy this and you want to see more of me working on this painting, of me doing this paint work, leave a comment. Talk about that. See, I'm still trying to debate on where I should go next. But I am happy to revisit this. I'm going to say I started this back in, I'm going to say 2000 and, 2015? Was it 2015? I don't remember. 6 years ago. Or 7 years ago. It's been a while. Let's just say that. Kind of put these paintings on pause. But yeah, everybody stay vigilant, stay focused, stay creative. Don't give in to all this idiotic, crazy behavior. You are much smarter than that. And band together, y'all. Start figuring out ways to make a big difference, Form some interesting connections and alliances. Because I don't honestly, I'm still going to vote regardless how I feel about this. I'm always gonna vote, but I'm not gonna have that be the reason why. I'm not gonna encourage people to do things as individuals, because I don't have that much faith in politicians. I don't believe that they will do their best to make our lives any better. It's up to us as people to do that. I think the faster people recognize that, the faster we're going to see some really good results. And something I mention very frequently, one of the biggest changes that we can create that's going to benefit all of us is by reducing the amount of hours and demanding livable wages. Reducing the amount of hours we work and demanding livable wages. If people are getting paid more, if people have more time for themselves, the overall societal sort of ethos is going to be at a much happier place. People will take care of their families more because they're going to have more time for themselves and time to enjoy their family life. They're going to take care of themselves as well. They're not going to be as frustrated and angry because they're just going day in and out, going to work and coming back with nothing to show for it. Barely any any money, barely any time to enjoy themselves, it reverberates. It absolutely causes this discontent, this anger, bad choices, crime, drug and alcohol abuse, all of that. It all stems from basically that sort of environment, that sort of reality, that a lot of people are just stuck going in circles. And, you know, we might have only one chance to experience life, and that's not the way we wanted to go, is it? Like, is that the way you want your entire life to be going forward? Absolutely not. Imagine most of you don't. So we got to start taking action as people. We got to start coming up with solutions and start pushing back and creating problems from all these exploiters, for all these like fascist Nazi supporters and these corporate fascist companies. We got to start doing stuff about that. So stay vigilant, everybody. And I will see you tomorrow for more Art Lounge Alley. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.